Well, I guess I can put this back on. All right. Oh, sorry. It's a silencer, sort of. Well, good morning, happy 4th of July, and, well, the big, beautiful bill passed. And one of the most interesting things in it is a provision removing the $200 tax on silencers, suppressors, and let me show you what we got here. Sorry, I have that up already. Here we go. The NRA has a little article about it here, and it's a pretty short and sweet kind of thing, but let's take a look at what we got here. The bill includes the NRA-sponsored language that eliminates the burdensome $200 excise tax imposed by federal law on suppressors, short-barreled rifles, and any other firearms as defined by the National Firearms Act. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, $200 is a tax on something you have a right to. Imagine if you had to pay a tax to protest. You shouldn't have to. In fact, if you wanted to protest this, you should be able to and not have to pay a tax or file fees. It's like some states that try to put a sales tax on Bibles. It's kind of illegal. Just my opinion. So it brings that down to $0. Now, what the bill could not do, and it was it was a dream for the Republicans, but unfortunately it's just not going to happen, is the bill could not remove the NFA entirely. That is not something a budget bill can do. It's a 51 vote kind of thing. You can only, if you have 51 votes, you can pass this bill because it's mainly devised to affect budget changes and taxes. So removing a tax, totally part of the scope of the laws and the rules for passing this kind of bill. Removing the NFA, however, not so much. Now, why is that? Well, short and sweet answer is you need 60 votes to pass one of those kind of bills to actually affect real law change. And that's because of a thing called the filibuster. Basically, in the old days, in fact, there's a movie about this, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Highly recommend it. Where Mr. Smith is trying to oppose a bill, and he decides to stand up and just keep talking. That is a filibuster. You have the floor, and no one can take it from you until you are done talking. So you could literally stand there forever, as long as you physically could, and you could stop progress. You could stop the bills from occurring. You could stop a vote. You could do everything. Now, to override that, you need 60 votes or two-thirds majority, and you could override a filibuster. That's what you need. So, a few years back, gosh, a lot longer than a few years back, but after the movie came out, they sort of changed the rules on that, where basically if you threaten to do filibuster, okay, we're going to take it seriously, but nobody actually has to go stand up and listen to you talk for days on end. We're just going to assume that you have the right to invoke a filibuster and change the rules. So that's why you kind of have a 60-vote requirement to make changes like this, to change the law. The NFA was designed, the National Firearms Act, to make it difficult for law-abiding citizens to own firearms. Now, the $200 sounds like it's kind of a lot, but it's not impossible to do. Well, it's kind of impossible if you were born back then. That $200 hasn't changed since the bill was enacted in 1934. And as you may have seen when I pulled this up, it is $200 in 1934. It's about $4,800 today. That is quite a lot. In fact, I can show you some of the provisions of the National Firearms Act from the ATF. It was designed to fight gang violence, particularly the Italian gang violence, the mafia. This was a bill targeting pretty much them. It was designed to help stop it. One of the big things back then, and they even reference it here, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. That was pretty bad. The thing is, with any gun control measure, with any tax, do you really think the gang members are going to pay it? Do you really think they're going to file their taxes and do the right thing? You know how they caught Al Capone? You know why he went to jail? Al Capone didn't go to jail because he got caught for murder or running a gang or selling drugs or selling booze. He got caught for not paying his taxes properly. That's how they got him. It wasn't guns. It wasn't anything else. Al Capone was taken down because of taxes. Because he's a criminal. Criminals don't pay taxes. How is that hard for anyone to figure out? Now, I had this told to me. Now, I'm not an accountant, so take this with a grain of salt. That theoretically, if, say, you're a illicit purveyor of, how would you say it without YouTube getting mad? Pharmaceuticals? If you know what I mean? That you could legally report on your taxes the money you earned from that such enterprise, and you didn't have to say where you got the money from. You could claim the Fifth Amendment and say, well, I don't have to tell you where I earned it. I'm doing my good citizen's duty and reporting that I earned a bunch of money selling things that kill people. Yeah. So that just shows you the kind of weirdness that's in the tax law. But let me go back to this here. Let's see if there's anything more interesting right here, because I had something else here. Yeah. Yeah. So imagine you were back in 1934 trying to pay a $200 tax. How many of you are going to be able to buy a gun and say, "Oh, well, you know, I can afford $4,800. That's no big deal. That's just a little bit of money." No one could afford that. Not back then. $200 now is a lot of money. And mainly this is the big thing this is going to apply for is suppressors. The movies call them silencers. They are not quiet. In fact, I wouldn't even recommend using one without hearing protection, but that's just, that's a safety conscious me. You only get one set of ears. Usually they help when you're using a firearm. But there's a lot of steps you have to go through to get this thing done. And there's a lot of local steps as well. Just because this has changed a little bit here doesn't mean your local laws have changed. I mean, you're still having to file all this information. You're just no longer paying the $200 tax. And that's great. It's a step in the right direction. Because, honestly, who in their right mind is not going to be able to do this? Sorry, it's killing me. Who is going to be... There's no criminal out there who's going to actually follow this anyway. No one's going to be like, oh, well, I'm just going to go register my firearms and register my silencer that I use for, because I'm a hitman. No. He's not going to do that. None of this... these laws don't actually make you safer. And that's the sad truth of it. In Mexico, there is only one legal gun store in Mexico City. Guns are heavily regulated in Mexico. Do you feel safe walking around Mexico? They have all these gun laws. You should be safe. No, you don't. You're not safe. Because these laws don't actually do anything. Do you think the gangs in Mexico care? Oh, well, I guess those guys in Mexico City are at it again. Oh, gosh darn. I'm going to have to take out, all these magazines and get smaller ones. No. They don't care. Of course, to be honest, they probably control most of the Mexican government. The cartels have a lot of power. Let's see here. I noticed one thing that was interesting here, and it was right here. The registration requirement imposed on the possessor of an unregistered firearm violated the possessor's privilege from a self-incrimination under a Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The Hayes decision made the 1934 Act virtually unenforceable. So they had an issue basically. If you owned one, you were still forced to register it, and they were like, well, you can't be forced to because the Fifth Amendment protects you from self-incrimination. You're not required in the United States to incriminate yourself. Generally, I'm not a lawyer, but that's basically what that means. That's why you can claim your taxes the way I just spoke of. Title II of the NFA to cure the constitutional firearm flaw pointed out in the Hayes decision. The requirement for possessors of unregistered firearms to register was removed. Under the amended law, there is no mechanism for a possessor to register an unregistered firearm already possessed by the person. So, if you already owned one, they couldn't make you go register it. So I'm not familiar with exactly how this works. because doing this is $200 is a lot of money to me. So I never would go through all this. I just never bought anything that would qualify into this. I'd go straight to Bass Pro Shops and just follow the procedures they have. Bass Pro Shops is, I know people don't like the big box stores and everything. I like them, and I bought my first firearm from them, and they were really nice about it. And I went through all the forms, filed all the paperwork, that you're required to do by law, and it's a pretty simple process. And the people there were really nice. I mean, I'm all about supporting your local gun shops. Go local if you can, but okay, here, I'll level with you. The gun I got was the same price as brand new at Bass Pro as it was used at the pawn shop. But granted, there was like a year or two difference when I got it. And I'm at the pawn shop, ironically looking for video games. Sometimes it's a great place to find vintage games because they really sell them at a discounted rate because they think they're trash. They're really worth something. And I looked at it and I'm like, this is the same price. And, the place I go was not known for raising their prices pretty high. They're usually a pretty discounted place. And I'm like, is this really what they do now? Apparently they hold their value a little better than I thought. So yeah. Anyway, I thought that was a pretty interesting thing that was thrown into the bill. It almost got removed. The Senate parliamentarian said, you can't do that without the 60 vote because it changes the law. And then they had to reword the language to basically just affect taxes. And then they were able to pass this without any issue. And, without any issue being, 50-50 vote and, J.D. Vance had to come save the day. And then they barely squeezed by in the House. And I think it's going to be a good thing. I think a lot of things in this bill are going to be great. My biggest concern is it does raise the deficit. It is going to cost money. Elon Musk is kind of right about why he's against it. And if you're against it, and that's one of your reasons, you have a strong point. I think it's going to do more harm than good. I think it's going to be slightly more positive than it is negative. I think it's going to help the deficit just a little bit if it works the way Trump says it's going to work. I have a whole thing on the Laffer curve, which is basically a bell curve where you have taxes on one side of the curve, and you have the tax rate, and you have the max income reported by the federal government. And somewhere at the top is an optimal tax rate. Not too high, not too low. Because we tax everyone to oblivion, no one makes money, and then they don't have anything. But I'll do a whole video on that later. I've talked about it a lot. It's one of my favorite things. From Ferris Bueller's Day Off, by the way. Anyway, have a happy 4th of July. Have a blessed day, and we'll see you next time.